Welcome to another episode of Preparing for the Unexpected. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and as always, we like to talk about things related to resilience, business continuity, emergency management, crisis management, anything that helps you, your organization, or your community prepare for, respond to, and overcome adverse situations. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please feel free. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am the only Alex Fullick there. I'm really easy to find, and I do respond to everything I get. Longtime listeners, you will know that I love talking about all kinds of things associated with resilience and our industry and different aspects. And today is another one of those days. We're going to talk about soft skills and the importance of those. And I'd like to welcome to the show, Jason Moss. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alex. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk about soft skills, our industry of resilience, and everything in between.
Great. I just want to clarify, it's Jason Haas. It sounded like I said Moss, but I was actually saying Haas. It just came out wrong. So let me just clarify that.
That's all right. I've been called worse in other times, and it's amazing how the last name can get butchered, but it's okay.
Now, I know you and I have had communications back and forth, and I know what you do, but could you take a minute or two for our global listeners and tell us about yourself and what you do and how you got into this crazy industry of ours?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity, first and foremost, and thank you to your listeners for watching and listening to me babble on. I have been in the resilience industry for about 10 years or so, and like most, I didn't start out as a resilience professional. My background is a professional photographer. I own and operated a vertically integrated business, which means we were a lab and photographers, so we were self-fulfilling. And I did that for about 20 years with a gaggle of partners. And I eventually had sold my business back in Wisconsin to move out to Colorado to acquire another business, and that didn't work out so hot for me. So I pivoted into my second career of IT, and it led me down to the path of resilience as COVID was starting. I had a leader like the way I built relationships with end users when I was doing desk side support, as in focus on the user and not so much the technology, understand how they interact and how they use or abuse the technology, then craft solutions for them. And that perked the interest of a leader when they had an open role in continuity disaster recovery. I was tapped to apply for that role, and I was lucky enough to be awarded it. And the rest is kind of history with me on that. It's been a wild journey. It's not something I ever expected to be in.
Yeah, that seems to be the journey of many of us is unexpected, but here we are, and it is a great. I enjoy it. I love it. All this.
Me too. I kind of wish I would have known about it a lot earlier. But I know I've been practicing it pretty much all of my life. I just never knew what it was actually called.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we have been doing this for a long time. We use it in our everyday life, but we don't know it. We don't know we're doing that.
It just comes to a point for a lot of people naturally. We always want to survive and persevere, do better, push for change. And those are all, concepts of resilience. So it's very interesting to see how our profession has changed and grown and gained, so to speak, in popularity, where, there's numerous job postings for it out there. Organizations are starting to see the value. It's not just a cost center, but it's when things get really tough where they realize that their investment into resilience or business continuity or disaster recovery, whatever you really want to call it, has been really crucial and important.
Yeah. I tell people that, you don't even know it, but you do use continuity in your everyday life. Have you ever driven to work or the local corner store and you find a roadblock or an accident and you find your way around it? That's your contingency. You're actually doing it. You don't even know you're doing it, but that is contingency. So
right. It just like when I first moved to Colorado, it was to acquire a business, at day 88 of day 90, when the contract was going to be invoked, it got blown up. It happens. It was absolutely devastating. Now I have no income. I'm in a new state and I dragged my family out here. I'm in a sticky situation. So at that point, you figure it out. You just know that you can't fail and that you accept it for what it is. You can't change the past. So you just push forward. You don't accept things at face value, and you just always find a way to persevere. And for that, I had to dig down deep, and it was challenging, and it was, mentally stressful. But, I stood up I resurrected more like my own business, and I did aerial data acquisition. There's the word. And with drone type platforms, did that for a while to provide income until I was able to find a different opportunity to become employed with. And then with that opportunity, I was a photographer, injured on the job, ended a lifelong career in photography. And that's what caused me to pivot back into the world of IT and resilience.
Yeah. Incredible journey, all those different pivots and different ways you look at things. And that's a great segue into today's topic of soft skills, of understanding what kind of skills it takes to do those things and be able to do those things and be aware of how and what to do with those things. So why don't we start with the most basic question? What is a soft skill?
It's a combination of skills. I believe soft skills rely on transparent communication. So you got to be able to express your ideas and concepts clearly. Also requires active listening. Communication's a two-way street. We can talk, but also it requires listening. And I prefer to listen first before talking when it comes to using a communication skill, being empathetical with how we communicate, to not be harsh and so direct or off-putting with our communication that it turns people off. I'm a huge believer in the idea of radical candor, which is to challenge. Oh gosh, of course, I'm going to totally forget this, what it means, but it's more or less where you challenge people directly. You have that transparency, you have that candid conversation. If there's something going on where you cut through the fluff, but when you have to challenge, you can also challenge that, personally, where you're not necessarily doing that in a public area and maybe causing embarrassment or bringing highlights to things that weren't appropriate amongst a larger group. But for me, radical candor has been, one of the key communication skills. I also look at soft skills as leadership skills. A lot of times, especially in continuity and resilience, we're a team of one, but we have to get buy-in from leadership. We have to turn those naysayers in the organization who look at us just, you're giving me more work to do when I'm already overburdened. And we have to lead them through that and, be that positive leader that they need to help them achieve the goals that they need to, as well as you need to, and the organization needs to. I also look at soft skills as teamwork. Again, a lot of times in resilience, we're single-threaded. We're a team of one. But again, when it comes to crisis or plan activations or disaster recovery, we're there leading the organization or segments of the organization through that adversity and getting people to work together to solve a common problem. Just like I look at teamwork when I go into a new organization, I look at payroll first. Payroll being the most successful employee retention program any organization runs. And when things get real, we need to make sure payroll is always running so we can get the sense of teamwork. People aren't going to show up to work just because it makes them feel good. This is still a transaction. We need to make sure people are compensated accordingly. And the organization wants to ensure that they'll show up in those worst of times. So keeping that flow of payroll going is absolutely critical to organizations. And it does really build some teamwork. I also believe with soft skills where you have work ethic, being reliable, responding to those emails in a acceptable time frame, whatever that means to you, but also being disciplined in your work, to a point where project managers were taking things from inception to completion and tracking it along, making sure stakeholders are doing their due diligence, poking the bear or the organization when it needs to, when it's not being necessarily effective. Also with soft skills, we have to be adaptable, especially in resilience. When we wake up each day, we never know what is really going to be there for us, whether it's a hurricane, a wildfire, a natural disaster, workplace violence, an active threat, whatever the adversity du jour is that day. We have to be adaptable. We're going to start one day, maybe, oh yeah, I'm going to do plans for this department. No, you're not. You just had a crisis. So you're going to pivot and figure it out. So that's the adaptability part. And then we have interpersonal skills, being able to build relationships with diverse individuals. One of the things that I love the most, I seek out the naysayers. It reminds me, I have a former business partner. It's to say a sale starts at the word no. And we're constantly selling something. We're selling, the resilience programs of the organization, personal resilience, how to persevere through crisis and different moments in life. And we really need these interpersonal skills to build those relationships. So when things get tough, we can leverage those. So we have effective lines of communication, so we can trust and rely on each other. And then for me, the last part of soft skills is cultural awareness. So DEI type efforts, understanding cultural differences, working well with people from various backgrounds, because we work with everyone from the C-suite down to a broom pusher and everyone in between. And each one of them is just as important to the organization. Sometimes I would say that broom pusher is a lot more important than that CEO, because I know when I need to get access to a building or figure out the latest chatter of going on in an organization, going to the custodial staff and other team members like that are really crucial, because they understand the organization. They are so interconnected with it. So those cultural awareness does matter. And if you're managing international teams, you're going to have customs and differences too that you need to be sensitive to, that you really need to take in consideration with how you communicate, how you build skills. What might be acceptable for you and your culture might be unsuccessful or look differently in other cultures, where you could really start off on a wrong foot by saying something that's okay to you and not to them.
I like that point you just made about quote unquote broom pusher. I had a previous life, worked in the hospitality restaurant industry for many, many years. And I always said the most important person in the restaurant was the dishwasher, or utility, or whatever they call that position these days. I said, how long do you think you're going to last if somebody isn't cleaning the dishes, or the pots, or whatever the case may be? I said, very, very short time frame. I said, if that person's not there, I said, so they're one of the most important people there, and I try to treat everybody that way, in that industry. So that's a good example that you gave there about the broom pusher and the janitorial staff. Yeah, they are
Right.
just as important.
When I had worked for the school district during COVID, our facilities managers were absolutely crucial in getting buildings stood back up after impacts from COVID, where they'd have to disinfect and all those nefarious things that they would have to do. They'd put themselves, exposed to potential COVID into a classroom, and they would have to disinfect it by hand and all those. And it also reminds me, when I was desk side support and I would need access to rooms, the facilities manager, they had the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. So I always knew they were my point person. They knew everything about the building that I needed to know. And I know they would be they're the first ones there in the morning and the last ones out at night. So they get the gist of everything that goes on. And they're so, so important when I plan, because I know they'll be the first ones on site.
Why do you think there is such a big push now for soft skills? Because for so many years, the push was understanding code and being able to rebuild the server, or sales, whatever the case may be. But now there is a big push for people to understand and leverage soft skills. Why do you think that's really taking a bigger focus for leadership? And even if you're not a leader, but a big push for soft skills now.
Right. Regardless of what your title is or what your duty is, soft skills are absolutely crucial. And I think, they've been shown a spotlight ever since COVID. It's potentially, just like resilience, might be one of a good output of COVID. One, it showed the importance and resilience of how it can help organizations survive adversity, like, global lockdown, supply chain disruptions, and all those good things. But when it comes to soft skills, we were segregated for a long time during COVID with lockdowns and, being exposed. And to a point, society kind of lost its collective mind. And I'm still wondering if it's still reeling back from that. And we forgot how to communicate with each other, because we lost those face-to-face interactions for a while. I'm not saying face-to-face interactions are the only way that we can use soft skills. We're using it right now, and we're doing this remotely. But soft skills, being able to talk to somebody, to be able to hear somebody. And I guess I got those confused again, but hear somebody first before you talk. Learn to understand. Learn to know, in my mind, I look at it. You're a person just like me. You have some adversities and struggles, challenges and opportunities just
Mhm.
like me. We're people. We're trying to do a very common thing with common goals. So why don't we just be nice to each other, figure it out, talk through it. We can agree to disagree. I'm not going to try to change your views on things, but what I'm going to do is share what my views are on things, the why of what I'm doing, and why I believe you should be helping me in doing this as well. So developing these soft skills, being able to build relationships with people, to work through adversity when we disagree or when we have challenging circumstances. I think of the wildfires in Maui and the hurricanes that are going through Florida and the new hurricane coming up the coast. Um, and those are going to be challenging situations. And if we're not using soft skills during that, when we have those tense moments, how are we going to possibly solve something? If we have shortages in generators and plywood and bottled water and food and transportation and fuel, well, yelling and screaming about it doesn't solve it. It
Mhm.
just exacerbates the issue so much more to where we can't possibly see clear. And that's the same with how we communicate each day and how we interact with each other professionally and personally. If we use emotional intelligence, be empathetical in our communications and how we perceive things, and just realize that we're in a common goal of, hey, we're going to survive, we're going to do best, society is going to grow. We all have this common goal, and it's really important that we just take a breath, hear the other side, and then find a path forward together.
You got me thinking about something there when you were talking about us being remote and different ways of interaction now. Do you think social media is causing a challenge for developing soft skills because we are so surrounded by social media posts, whether it be Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and so many other things, news, and anything. And that sometimes we see so much negativity that it's hard to develop the soft skills which we need to be in a positive frame. Do you think that's causing some of the challenges that we're having with soft skills now?
For sure. One are people are jumping to conclusions and taking what's on the internet as factual. And just like in newspaper and print, just because it's in print or on the internet doesn't necessarily mean it's real. That is some person's perspective and objective, and we have to consider the source. Social media is both a blessing and a curse. Like in my household, I have two children, 11 and 12. They're forbidden from social media. They cannot participate in it, and my daughter hates me for it. But in the end, it's for the best. Things happen, peer pressure. With my daughter being so young, she's still developing. Who is she? How does she perceive herself in this world? And social media can give us unrealistic expectations
Mhm.
and things like that. So I want to try to control that narrative as much as I can personally. Professionally, it can be great. It can also kill your organization. I had the absolute pleasure and joy of attending the MIT Crisis Management and Business Resilience course back in July. And the my biggest takeaway on it is control the narrative. If you're not controlling the narrative, somebody else will gladly do that for you.
Mhm.
And so when it comes to social media, whether they're talking about your organization or whether your organization's engaging in social media, that's all about controlling the narrative and the perception of what your organization is and what it might be about. If it's, because of crisis or resilience type activation, well, we're going to have considerations around that too. And social media can blow that up. As we see with our election cycles, we have that fake news, we have, um, adverse actors in there, not adverse actors. Anyways, adversaries, and they're trying to corrupt our political process with fake news, misstatements, and getting people to believe something that isn't necessarily true. And that's, again, one of the powers of social media. We can use it for good and we can use it for bad. Similar with AI, we can use it for good or we can use it for bad.
Mhm.
And I think it holds a place in society, but I think it's kind of overgrown some of its usefulness to a point. I see the trends with TikTok, all this short attention span type things, and I question the validity of that. And I see myself getting stuck in a cycle of, oh, I've got 5 minutes to kill. Let me watch 100 videos, and and I get nothing in return for that besides my wasted time. I don't come out knowing anything better. In essence, I've turned off my brain so I can listen to rubbish. And that isn't necessarily what I want out of social media. I looked at LinkedIn, which that is interesting as well. It's no Facebook or X or other social media type platforms, but there's interesting political interests on there, people posting pictures about a puppy that was injured, or you have maybe a bad actor trying to compromise your LinkedIn account so they can hurt your reputation, and all those wonderful things. Social media, again, a blessing and a curse. It all depends how you want to use it and what mindset you go in with it.
With social media and soft skills, do you think it really comes down to our own self-awareness?
In the end, we're the cause of and solution to the problem. Social media doesn't necessarily post by itself. Well, that's kind of not a true statement. You can use AI and bots to create content and create engagement, but in the end, it took a person to stand that up. Just like I look at resilience and DR events, we could have that smoking hole in the ground. Still need the people to show up to try and fix it, to continue pushing the organization forward. So to me, I look at things on social media. Yeah, those were people's thought processes. They had an objective behind what they posted, and they're trying to, invoke some sort of reaction, whether it's a negative reaction or a positive reaction. So yeah, there's always intent with it. We aren't mindless quite yet.
And I guess if we're not self-aware of our own empathy and our own way of behaving and how we react to situations, controlling our soft skills, then we could go off on tangents ourselves.
Right. And trust me, I'm known for going off on tangents and just going off the rails. I need bowling bumpers or guide rails at times, and I've not always been one for the gift of gab, but personal adversity changed that for me. But yeah, we go in, we use emotional intelligence. What are we trying to get out of it? What are we trying to invoke, and how are we going to respond? And yeah, there's always intent and purpose with any social media posting. If we're looking at personal, it might be portraying a certain lifestyle that may not be existent. So you're creating a false narrative. For an organization, it may be trying to brush over that last ransomware attack that happened. I'm looking at you, Dish Network, where, get in front of it, own it, be transparent about it. Bad things happen. We're not immune to it. And in the end, if we can be transparent in that communication, we can start owning that narrative instead of letting somebody else own it for you. Still looking at you, Dish Network. You've not done a great job with being really transparent on your cyber or your ransomware. On the upside, they got out of it. They paid the ransom. But where's the communications around it? How do their shareholders feel? What does the executive staff feel? How about we just be real, own our problems, own our adversity, and let's work together to solve it?
Yeah. On that note, we've come to the end of our first segment. We're talking with Jason Haas today about soft skills and resilience, and we will be right back. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.